Hello, and welcome to Tales for Life. In each episode of this podcast, we'll explore a folk or fairy tale from a different culture or region and discover the life lessons, values, and morals they offer that we can use today. Join me on the journey through the magical and meaningful world of folk and fairy tales. Hello, and welcome back to Tales for Life, the podcast that journeys through life, one tale at a time. Today's episode looks at an unfamiliar version of a familiar tale to tackle a common issue. I've called this episode, Create Your Opportunities, Then Seize Them. We all want to move forward in life, in our work, in our relationships, in the way we show up in the world. So we spend a lot of time scanning the horizon for opportunities, hoping the right one will drift our way. But sometimes we end up behaving a bit like a mussel clinging to a rock, waiting for the tide to bring food close enough to grab. And when nothing seems to come along, it's easy to feel stuck, as if progress is something that happens to other people. The truth is, waiting rarely gets us where we want to go. At some point, we have to shift from being passive observers of our own lives to active participants. Opportunities don't always arrive neatly packaged or perfectly timed. More often, they show up because we nudged a door open, asked a question, tried something new, or took a step that felt a little uncomfortable. When we stop relying on fate to hand us the next chapter and instead start shaping it ourselves, things begin to move. And that brings us to today's story from Portugal, the Hearth Cat. It's a reminder that the things we long for don't simply fall into our hands. They take effort, intention, and sometimes a bit of courage to reach for something better. In this tale, we see how creating your own opening, even a small one, can lead to the moment when everything changes. It's a story about stepping forward, even when the world hasn't yet given you permission. There was once a schoolmistress who was a widow and had a daughter who was very plain. This mistress had a pupil who was very pretty and the daughter of a traveler. The mistress was very attached to her father and every day would beg the girl to ask him to marry her, promising to give her porridge made with honey. The girl went home to ask her father to marry her schoolmistress, as she would then give her porridge made with honey. To this request, the father replied that he would not marry her, for he well knew that though she said now that she would give her porridge made with honey, later on she would give her porridge with gall. Yet, as the girl began to cry, begging her father to consent, the father, who loved his child very much, in order to comfort her, replied that he would order a pair of boots to be made of iron, and hang them up until the boots would rust to pieces with age, when he would marry the mistress. The little girl, very pleased to hear this, went immediately to tell the mistress, who then instructed her pupil to wet the boots every day. The little girl did so, and after a while the boots fell to pieces, and she went and told her father of it. He then said that he would marry the mistress, and on the following day, married her. So long as the father was at home, the child was treated with kindness and affection. But the moment he went out, the mistress was very unkind to her and treated her badly. She one day sent her to graze a cow and gave her a loaf which she desired her to bring back whole, and an earthen pot with water, out of which she expected her to drink, and yet was to bring back full. One day the mistress told the girl that she wished her to employ herself in winding some skeins of thread until the evening. The little girl went away crying and bewailing her lot, but the cow comforted her and told her not to be distressed, to fix the skein on her horns and unravel the thread. The good cow after that took out all the crumbs from the loaf by making a small hole with one of her horns, and then stopped the aperture and gave the girl the loaf back again entire. In the evening the girl returned home. When her stepmother saw that she had finished her task and brought all the thread ready wound, she was very vexed and wanted to beat her, saying that she was sure the cow had had something to do with it, and next day ordered the animal to be killed. At this, the girl began to cry very bitterly, but the stepmother told her that she would have to clean and wash the cow's entrails in a tank they had, however grieved she might feel for the loss of the animal. The cow, however, again told the girl not to be troubled, but to go and wash her entrails, but was to be careful to save whatever she saw come out of them. The girl did so, and when she was cleaning them, she saw a ball of gold come out and fall into the water. The girl went into the tank to search for it, and there she saw a house with everything in it in disorder, and she began to arrange and make the house look tidy. She suddenly heard footsteps, and in her hurry she hid herself behind the door. The fairies entered and began to look about, and a dog came in also with them and went up to where she was and began to bark, saying, "Bow, bow, bow! Behind the door hides somebody who did us good and will yet render us more services. Bow, bow, bow! Behind the door hides somebody who has done us good and will yet render us more services." The fairies, as they searched about, hearing the dog bark, discovered where the girl was hiding and began to say to her, "We endow you by the power we possess with the gift of beauty, making you the most lovely maiden ever seen." The next fairy then said, "I cast a sweet spell over you, so that when you open your mouth to speak, pearls and gold shall drop from your lips." The third fairy coming forward said, "I endow you with every blessing, making you the happiest maiden in the world. Take this wand, it will grant you whatever you may ask." The girl then left the enchanted region and returned home, and as soon as the mistress's daughter saw her approach, she commenced to cry out to her mother to come quickly and see the Hearth Cat, who had come back at last. The mistress ran to greet her and asked her where and what she had been doing all that time. The girl related the contrary of what she had seen, as the fairies had instructed her to do, that she had found a tidy house and that she had disarranged everything in it to make it look untidy. The mistress sent her own daughter there, and she had hardly arrived at the house when she began at once to do as her half-sister had told her. She disarranged everything to make the house look untidy and uncared for, and when she heard the fairies coming in, she hid behind the door. The little dog saw her, and barking at her said, "Behind the door stands one who has done us much harm and will still continue to molest us. Bow, bow, bow! Behind the door stands one who has done us much harm and will continue to molest us on the first opportunity." The fairies, hearing this, approached her, and one began to say, "I throw a spell over you, which will render you the ugliest maid that can be found." The next one took up the word and said, "I bewitch you, so that when you attempt to speak, all manner of filth shall fall out of your mouth." And the third fairy said, "I also bewitch you, and you shall become the poorest and most wretched maid in existence." The mistress's daughter returned home, thinking she was looking quite a beauty. But when she came up close to her mother and began to speak, the mother burst out crying on seeing her own daughter so disfigured and wretched. Full of rage, she sent her stepdaughter to the kitchen, saying that she was the Hearth Cat, and that she should take care that she's kept there as the only place which was fit for her. On a certain day, the mistress and her daughter repaired to some races which were then taking place. But when the girl saw that they had left the house, she asked her divining rod to give her a very handsome dress, boots, a hat, and everything complete. She dressed and adorned herself with all she had and went to the races, and stood in front of the royal stand. The mistress's daughter instantly saw her and began to exclaim and cry out at the top of her voice, in the midst of all the people present, saying, "Oh, mother, mother, that beautiful maiden over there is our very Hearth Cat." The mother, to quiet her, told her to be calm, that the maiden was not her stepsister, as she had remained at home under lock and key. The races were hardly over when the girl departed home, but the king, who had seen her, was in love with her. The moment the mother reached home, she asked the Hearth Cat whether she had been out. She replied that she had not, and showed her face besmeared with smut. Next day, the girl asked the wand to strike and give her another dress which would be more splendid than the previous one. She put on her things and repaired to the races. The moment the king perceived her, he felt very pleased indeed. But the races were hardly concluded, then she retired in haste and went into her carriage and drove home, leaving the king more in love than ever with her. The third day, the girl asked the divining rod to give her a garment which should surpass the other two in richness and beauty, and other shoes, and she went and attended the races. When the king saw her, he was delighted, but was again disappointed to see her depart before the races were concluded. In her hurry to enter her carriage quickly, she let fall one of her slippers. The king picked it up and returned to the palace, and fell lovesick. The slipper had some letters upon it which said, "This shoe will only fit its owner." The whole kingdom was searched to find the lady whose foot would be found to fit the slipper exactly, yet no one was found. The schoolmistress went to the palace to try the slipper on, but all her efforts were in vain. After her, her daughter followed, and endeavored her best to fit the slipper on, but with no better success. There only remained the Hearth Cat. The king inquired who was the next to try on the slipper, and asked the mistress if there was any other lady left in her house who could fit on the slipper. The schoolmistress then said that there only remained a Hearth Cat in her house, but that she had never worn such a slipper. The king ordered the girl to be brought to the palace, and the mistress had no alternative but to do so. The king himself insisted on trying the slipper on the girl's foot, and the moment she put her little foot into the slipper and drew it on, it fitted exactly. The king then arranged that she should remain in the palace and married her, and he ordered the mistress and her daughter to be put to death. If parts of this story felt familiar, you're not imagining it. The Hearth Cat shares the same bones as Cinderella. The mistreatment, the transformation, the lost slipper, the royal wedding. But if we only focus on the Prince Charming moment, we miss the deeper truth pulsing underneath. This isn't a story about being rescued. It's a story about someone who kept creating her own chances long before anyone noticed her. The magic isn't the gowns or the slipper. The magic is the effort. So what do we take with us this week? First, creating opportunities works for everyone. The schoolmistress didn't wait for the iron boots to crumble on their own. She made that moment happen. And the stepdaughter didn't sit at home wishing for a better life. She used the divining rod, dressed herself up, and put herself where the king would actually see her. If you want something, don't wait for the perfect moment to arrive. Create the moment yourself. Second, don't overlook the small steps. Cleaning the fairy's house didn't look anything like escaping misery or marrying a king. But it mattered. It was part of the path. Every opportunity we create has these mundane, ordinary, unglamorous steps. The ones that don't look like progress, until suddenly they are. And as we saw, neglecting those steps can cost you everything. And third, nothing meaningful happens overnight. The stepdaughter didn't transform her life in a single day. She didn't even lose the slipper on the first day. Real change takes time. Patience isn't just a virtue, it's a requirement for success. Staying the course is what turns effort into outcomes. As you head into your week, remember, Opportunities aren't rare gifts handed to a lucky few. They're built, shaped, nudged, and sometimes wrestled into existence by people just like you. So take a step, make a move, create your opening, and when it appears, seize it with both hands. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on Tales for Life.